In Eldridge Hollow's eerie quiet, where rain hammers like a desperate plea, Harold and Evelyn Quimby, the town's dullest duo, lie awake as thunder hisses secrets. Is the storm's rhythm a cryptic code from beyond? Visit Midnight, Old Oak. Who summons them to the ancient tree's shadow? As spectral echoes of unlived lives emerge, tempting the Quimbys with wild possibilities, their bland world cracks. Will they embrace the storm's chaos, sparking a sleepy town into wonder, or drown in its mystery? Dive into a suspenseful tale where boredom births a thrilling unraveling. Whispers Under the Drizzle. In the sleepy hollow of Eldridge Hollow, where the streets curved like forgotten sighs, and the lampposts flickered with the reluctance of old men sharing war stories, lived Harold and Evelyn Quimby. They were the town's unspoken punchline, the couple whose very existence seemed to dull the edges of excitement around them. Harold, a retired accountant whose spreadsheets had once balanced municipal budgets with the precision of a metronome, spent his days aligning salt shakers on the kitchen table. Evelyn, a former librarian who alphabetized her spice rack by the faint echo of their scents, cinnamon before clove, because C came after the whisper of B, knitted scarves that no one ever wore, each stitch a testament to her unwavering commitment to the predictable. The townsfolk of Eldridge Hollow, a cluster of clapboard houses huddled against the perpetual threat of autumn winds, had long since invited the Quimbys to potlucks or bridge nights. "They're like beige wallpaper," Mrs. Hargrove from the bakery would murmur over her coffee, her voice laced with the pity of someone who secretly envied their tranquility. "You forget they're there until you realize the room feels emptier without the nothing." And yet, on this particular September evening, as the sky cracked open like an overripe plum and rain began its relentless tattoo against the world, the Quimbys found themselves at the epicenter of a storm that would unravel the threads of their tedium in ways neither could have forecasted. It was 7:30 when the first drops kissed the tin roof of their modest bungalow on Willow Lane. Harold, ensconced in his armchair by the window, a relic from his aunt's estate, upholstered in a floral pattern that evoked the mild disappointment of wilted daisies, glanced up from his crossword puzzle. "Rain," he said, his voice a gentle rumble, like gravel shifting underfoot in a garden path. Evelyn, perched on the edge of the sofa with her knitting needles clicking in rhythmic Morse code, nodded without lifting her eyes. "Indeed." She paused, her fingers hovering mid-stitch, as if the word had snagged on an invisible burr. "The forecast called for it, but I thought perhaps the clouds would reconsider." Harold filled in a clue, 7 letters for mundane, with the steady hand of the man who had never once deviated from the straight line. "Mundane," he murmured, penciling it in. "Fits, doesn't it?" She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that bloomed and faded like morning mist. "Like us?" The rain escalated, transforming from a polite patter to a symphony of percussion, each drop a tiny hammer forging the night into something insistent. The Quimbys rose in unison, a choreography honed over 42 years of marriage, and shuffled toward the kitchen. Dinner had been poached salmon, flaked precisely into portions neither too generous nor stingy, served with steamed asparagus aligned like soldiers on parade. Now, with the meal digested and the dishes stacked in the drainer like a minimalist sculpture, they prepared for bed with the efficiency of a well-oiled clockwork. But as Harold flicked off the kitchen light, a peculiar thing occurred. The bulb hummed, flickered, and then, with a sigh akin to a weary exhale, went dark. The house plunged into a twilight gloom, pierced only by the silvery veins of lightning threading the sky outside. "Power's out," Harold stated, his tone carrying the weight of mild observation rather than alarm. Evelyn lit a candle from the drawer, the one reserved for such inevitabilities.
its flame dancing like a hesitant waltz partner. "We'll manage. The bed's still warm from the afternoon nap." They ascended the stairs, the wooden treads creaking under their synchronized steps, and entered the bedroom where the rain now drummed against the panes like impatient fingers on a desk. The house was a sanctuary of sameness. Quilt folded at precise right angles, nightstand books stacked by spine height, Harold's dog-eared copy of The History of Tax Codes atop Evelyn's Victorian Etiquette for the Modern Soul. They changed into their matching flannel nightgowns, pale blue as the underbelly of a dove, and slipped beneath the covers. Sleep, however, proved elusive that night. The storm outside swelled, wind howling through the eaves like a chorus of spectral hounds, and Harold found himself staring at the ceiling fan, its blades frozen in silent judgment. Beside him, Evelyn shifted, her breath a soft counterpoint to the chaos beyond the window. "Can't settle?" he ventured, his hand finding hers under the quilt in the dark, a gesture as familiar as breathing. She squeezed his fingers, the pressure light, but laden with the unspoken. "The rain. It's speaking tonight, Harold." He turned his head on the pillow, the faint glow of the candle from the hallway casting shadows that elongated their forms into giants. "Speaking? It's just water, Evelyn, falling where gravity insists." But she propped herself on an elbow, her silver-streaked hair catching the light like threads of moonlight. "Listen closer. Not the roar. The spaces between. There's a rhythm, Harold, like a code." He chuckled, a low vibration in his chest, but curiosity, the rarest of visitors in their lives, nudged him upright. Together they sat against the headband, the quilt pooled round their waists like a surrendered flag. The rain's cadence filled the room. Tap, tap, whoosh, patter, pour, slosh. And in the pauses, Harold heard it too. A whisper, faint as the rustle of forgotten letters in an attic trunk.
"It's Morse," he said suddenly, his accountant's ear attuned to patterns. Dot dash, short long. Evelyn's eyes widened, twin pools reflecting the storm's fury. "Translate it." He leaned toward the window, rain slooshing down the glass in rivulets that blurred the world outside into an impressionist haze. Closing his eyes, he parsed the sounds, short burst for dot, lingering pour for dash. V, I, S, I, T. He paused as thunder grumbled approval. "Visit." "Visit?" Evelyn echoed, her voice a thread of intrigue weaving through the mundane. "From whom?" The message continued, the rain's voice growing bolder. O, L, D, F, I, E, N, D. Harold's brow furrowed, lines etching deeper than the years had carved. Old friend. An old friend? In Eldridge Hollow, their circle had shrunk to echoes. The baker who nodded over loaves, the postman who sorted their bills with mechanical sympathy. But old friend evoked ghosts, names unspoken for decades, faces blurred by time's indifferent fog. "Perhaps it's a prank," Harold suggested, though doubt laced his words like cream and coffee. "The neighbors with their ham radios." Evelyn shook her head, drawing the quilt tighter. "No, feel the air, Harold. It's charged, like before a ledger balances itself." They waited, the storm's Morse evolving into fragments. M, E, E, T, A, T, M, I, D, N, I, G, H, T. Midnight. And then a location. B, E, H, I, D, T, O, A, K. The old oak. Eldridge Hollow's ancient sentinel, a gnarled behemoth at the town's edge, its branches clawing at the sky like arthritic fingers pleading for secrets. Planted, legend whispered, by the first settlers to mark the boundary between the known and the veiled.
Midnight, Evelyn breathed, glancing at the wind-up clock on the nightstand, its hands creeping toward 11 like conspirators. An hour away. Harold's practical mind rebelled. We're 68, Evelyn, in our nightgowns, in a gale that could uproot fences. But her gaze held a spark, the first in years, a flicker of the girl who'd once dreamed of sailing spice routes before settling for catalog cards. Boring, Harold. That's what they call us. What if this is our unraveling, our one wild footnote? He considered the crossword on the nightstand downstairs, unfinished. The rain's plea echoed, "Visit old friend." Against all logic, against the very fabric of their beige existence, Harold nodded. Fetched the raincoats, the yellow ones from the hall closet. Exhilaration, tentative as a fawn's first step, coursed through them as they descended the stairs, the candle's flame bobbing like a will-o'-wisp. The yellow slickers, relics from a long-ago county fair, crackled as they shrugged them on, stiff with disuse, smelling of rubber and regret. Evelyn tugged on her galoshes, Harold his boots, and they stepped into the maelstrom. The street was a river of shadows, puddles merging into lakes that reflected the lightning's jagged scribes. Wind whipped their coats into sails, rain stinging like nettles. They clutched each other, not for warmth, but for anchor, and trudged toward the town's fringe, where Willow Lane dissolved into a gravel path flanked by sodden meadows. Conversation flowed in snatches, stolen between gusts. "Remember Mr. Ellis?" Evelyn called over the howl, her voice slicing the din. "The watchmaker from our youth? He vanished after insisting the clock's whispered prophecies." Harold gripped her arm as they skirted a flooded ditch. "And you laughed, called it folly, said time was linear, like a receipt tape." She laughed now, a sound bright as fractured glass. "Perhaps the rain knows better. It's fluid after all, rewriting paths with every drop." The old oak loomed ahead, a silhouette against the roiling clouds, its trunk broader than 3 men abreast, bark etched with runes that might have been lightning scars or lovers' oaths. They approached, sodden and breathless, midnight tolling from the distant church steeple like a summons. There, beneath the boughs, stood a figure, hunched against the torrent, cloaked in an oilskin that gleamed like obsidian. Not a ghost, but flesh, tall, gaunt, with eyes like polished agates catching the storm's glow. "Quimby's," the man rasped, his voice a gravel chorus. "You've come." Harold's heart stuttered, recognition dawning like a slow-burning fuse. "Thaddeus? Thaddeus Crow?" Evelyn gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Thaddeus Crow? Their college chum, the one who chased whirlwinds and bottled lightning, only to vanish after graduation into rumors of arcane pursuits. Last seen 20 years prior, mailing postcards from places that didn't appear on maps." "In the flesh," Thaddeus replied, a wry twist to his lips. Water streamed from his hood, but he stood unmoved, as if the storm were an old acquaintance. "The rain summoned you, my little experiment in elemental telegraphy." "Experiment?" Harold echoed, sheltering Evelyn under the oak's meager canopy. Leaves showered down like confetti from a somber party. Thaddeus nodded, producing from his cloak a device no larger than a pocket watch, brass gears whirring faintly, etched with symbols that danced in the lightning. "A storm caller. I've been perfecting it in the wilds, whispering to clouds, bending their voices. Needed witnesses. Boring ones, mind you. The dull don't attract complications." Evelyn tilted her head, rain tracing rivulets down her cheeks. Complications? Like what? He glanced skyward, where clouds boiled like alchemical brews. The veil. It thins in tempests like this. Old friends, real ones from beyond, slipped through. I called you to bear witness, not partake. Your tedium is your shield. Harold's mind raced, piecing fragments like a fractured abacus. "And if we refuse?" Thaddeus's eyes gleamed. The rain would have kept pouring its plea until dawn. "But you're here. Look, it's starting." A rift tore the air above the oak, not thunder, but a seam in reality, swirling vapors coalescing into shapes, ethereal forms translucent as rice paper drifting like dandelion seeds on the gale. One materialized closer, a woman in diaphanous gown, her features shifting like sand dunes, now laughing, now weeping, her voice a suspicious of lost languages. "Spirits," Evelyn whispered, awe threading her tone. "Not ghosts, echoes. What ifs made manifest." Thaddeus adjusted his device, gears clicking like conspiratorial teeth. "Precisely. The storm stirs the unsaid. Yours, Quimby's, is a life of saids, all tallied, all filed, but even you have whispers." The spirit woman glided nearer, her form resolving into a younger Evelyn, vibrant, with hair unbound and eyes alight with uncharted fire. "I could have been a cartographer," she breathed, voice overlapping with the rain's chorus, "mapping stars from balloon baskets, not shelves of dust." Evelyn, the real one, reached out, fingers brushing vapor that tingled like static. "You are me, the fork not taken."
Harold watched, transfixed, as his own echo emerged, a herald in explorer's vest, compass in hand, charting rivers that led to unclaimed horizons. "And I, the surveyor of dreams, not debits," Thaddeus interjected, his tone urgent. "Touch them lightly, they feed on regret, swell until they consume the tether." But Evelyn, emboldened, stepped forward. "No, let them speak. We've been silent too long." The storm raged fiercer, the rift widening to a maw that swallowed stars. The echoes conversed in a torrent, the Evelyn spirit recounting voyages to archipelagos of cloud cities, where bridges spanned thunderheads, Harold's double, detailing expeditions into crystal caverns, where echoes of ancient symphonies played on stalactite harps. Their words wove tapestries, vivid, visceral, painting scenes of bazaars under auroral skies, feasts with phoenix-roasted fruits that burst with liquid song, dances on the backs of leviathans gliding through abyssal trenches. Harold felt a pull, a gravity of what might have been, tugging at his core. "We chose safety," he murmured to Thaddeus, "steady pulses over erratic heartbeats. Yet here you stand, in the fray, boring, perhaps, but anchors in the gale." As the echoes swelled, their forms gaining solidity, flesh tones bleeding into translucence, the rain's Morse shifted. C-H-O-O-S-E. Choose. Evelyn's hand tightened on Harold's. "We merge or sever?" The echoes lunged, tendrils of possibility coiling like serpents. Thaddeus cranked his device, brass humming a counter-melody, but the storm laughed, a thunderclap that shook the oak's roots. In that crux, Evelyn turned to Harold, rain-matted hair framing her face like a halo of defiance. "We've tallied enough. Let's ledger the unknown." He nodded, and together they stepped into the embrace, not retreating, but advancing. Their hands met the echoes, and a surge erupted, memories not theirs, flooding in, but refracted through their prism. Evelyn glimpsed balloon ascents, but as co-pilots, charting safe descents. Harold surveyed caverns, but with ledgers ensuring the miners' fair shares. The merger wasn't erasure, but augmentation, a quiet revolution, infusing their cores with sparks without scorching the hearth. The rift shuddered, spirits dissolving into mist that the wind scattered like chaff. The rain eased to a murmur, the storm's fury spent. Thaddeus pocketed his collar, eyes wide with unfeigned wonder. "You didn't just witness, you re-wove." Dawn crept in, gray and tentative, painting the meadows in hues of wet pearl. The Quimbys, coats heavy as lead, but spirits buoyant as zephyrs, bid Thaddeus farewell, he vanishing into the mist with a promise of postcards from weirder climes. Back home, as the power flickered on and the kettle whistled its mundane hymn, they shed their slickers. No words at first, just the steam curling like departing phantoms. Then over tea, Evelyn's with a dash of cinnamon she'd alphabetized last spring. Harold spoke. "We'll still be called boring." She stirred her cup, the spoon tinkling like wind chimes. "Let them. We've danced with echoes. That's our wild hidden in the folds."
And as sleep finally claimed them that morning, the rain's last whispers fading, Eldridge Hollow slumbered on, unaware that its beige heart had pulsed with the extraordinary. But the chapter wasn't over. The merger lingered, seeding dreams that night as thunder rumbled a distant encore. In slumber, Harold wandered a library not of books, but of living ledgers. Pages that fluttered like birds, inscribing futures in ink that shimmered with possibility. He turned a corner, shelves giving way to a vast atrium where Evelyn waited, clad in a gown woven from star charts. "We've only begun," she said, extending a hand. "The accounts are open." They delved deeper, the dreamscape unfolding into corridors of crystal calculators that hummed prophecies, each keystroke birthing blooms of data flowers, petals unfurling statistics on untraveled paths. A corridor led to a chamber where shadows debated economics of the ethereal. How many regrets equaled a single leap? Harold, ever the balancer, mediated, his voice steady as he tallied intangibles into tangibles. Evelyn, meanwhile, in a parallel reverie, navigated archives of aroma, shelves groaning under vials of scents from phantom voyages, the brine of undiscovered seas, the spice of bazaars bartering dreams. She uncorked one, and the air thickened with visions, markets where vendors hawked bottled sunrises, their glow trading for whispers of untold tales. A spectral librarian, part her echo, part invention, challenged her. "Catalog or create?" Evelyn replied, "Illuminate," and the vials shattered into constellations, each star a story seed planting itself in her mind. Their dreams intertwined midway, threads crossing in the hypnagogic haze, Harold's ledgers blooming into Evelyn's scented maps, numbers perfuming into narratives. They met in a nexus, a rainy pavilion afloat on a sea of ink, where drops fell not as water, but as words, pooling into paragraphs they read aloud. "Listen," Harold said, tracing a droplet script. "The town awakens to whispers. Bakers kneading dough that rises with riddles. Postmen sorting letters from alternate lives." Evelyn leaned in, her dream form vibrant. "And we, the quiet catalysts?" They laughed, the sound echoing as ripples that reshaped the sea into archipelagos of anecdote. One island hosted a symposium of forgotten footnotes, minor characters from history's margins debating the merits of monotonous camouflage from mischief. A philosopher in threadbare robes posited, "Boredom is the ultimate slight. It hides revolutions in plain sight." Harold countered, "Or it's the canvas for subtlety, strokes so fine they evade the eye until the masterpiece reveals itself." Evelyn mediated with a vial of revelation scent, misting the air until arguments dissolved into alliances, the island blooming with hybrid ideas, tax codes scented like adventure, etiquette guides charting moral mazes. As the dream deepened, the pavilion drifted toward a horizon where rainbows arched not in color, but in cadence, Morse again, but joyful. EMBRACETHDRIFT. Embrace the drift. They awoke at dusk, the room bathed in the afterglow of a sun that had briefly pierced the clouds. No words needed. The merger's residue hummed between them like a shared pulse. Dinner that evening deviated gloriously. Evelyn improvised a stew with spices rearranged not by alphabet, but by whim. Clove daring to lead, cinnamon chasing with audacious warmth. Harold, forgoing his precise flaking, mashed potatoes into abstract swirls, each mound a topographic map of imagined terrains. Conversation meandered like a brook unchained. "What if Thaddeus returns?" Evelyn pondered, spoon midway to lips. Harold speared a carrot, its orange a defiant slash. "We host him, with a feast of footnotes, stories we've hoarded." She grinned, the expression foreign, yet fitting, like a key long lost slotting home. "And the town? They'll notice the shift, the scarves knitted with patterns that twist like vines. Let them whisper, we're no longer wallpaper, we're the subtle weave holding the pattern." Night fell softly, the rain reduced to a lullaby drizzle. Bed claimed them eagerly, but sleep wove new tapestries. Evelyn dreamed of a conservatory where plants grew from punctuation, sentences sprouting leaves, questions blooming thorns that pricked truths. She pruned a particularly verbose vine, its sap yielding nectar of narrative clarity. Tales of Eldridge Hollow's underbelly, where the lampposts harbored lanterns of lost time, illuminating paths to parallel versions of the town. One vibrant with festivals of floating lanterns, another subdued but seething with subterranean symphonies. Harold's dream took him to a forge of formulas, anvils ringing with equations that birthed artifacts, compasses pointing to emotional norths, scales weighing whims against wisdoms. He hammered a particularly stubborn alloy, regret fused with resolve, until it yielded a blade of balance, keen enough to slice through veils of hesitation. Wielding it, he carved doorways in dream walls, each portal framing vignettes, a younger self proposing to Evelyn, not under the staid oak of their youth, but on top of a hill where winds carried petals of prophecy. Their dreams converged again, this time in a marketplace of the mind, stalls hawking curios from their merged echoes. A vendor with Thaddeus's eyes offered storm callers miniaturized for pockets, whispering weather wisdoms. Evelyn bartered a scarf knitted from syntax, trading for a vial of velocity, essence to quicken the slow. Harold haggled with a spectral accountant for ledgers of levity, paying in puns that balanced books with laughter. A commotion stirred the bazaar, a rift smaller than the oaks, but insistent, birthing a troop of trickster sprites, mischief made manifest, capering on gusts of giggles. They pickpocketed pauses from dialogues, turning solemn exchanges into slapstick serenades. One sprite, pint-sized with eyes like mischief's
Own embers perched on Harold's shoulder. Boring. Ha! You're the blank page we scribble on. Evelyn swatted playfully, her hand passing through ether. Scribble wisely, then. No erasures, only edits. The sprites, delighted, orchestrated a chase. Through alleys of allegory, over bridges of banter, dodging downpours of drollery. Harold and Evelyn pursued, not as prey, but partners. Their laughter a lure that tamed the tumult. The lead sprite, cornered in a cul-de-sac of conundrums, surrendered with a bow. A pact, your dull days laced with our dashes of daring. Dawn's herald stirred them, the dreams packed, lingering like aftertaste. Over breakfast, oatmeal swirled into spirals of speculation. They dissected the night's bounty. Sprites, Harold mused, tracing patterns in his porridge, guardians of the gap between said and unsaid. Evelyn nodded, adding berries in asymmetrical bursts. They'll visit waking hours, I wager. Watch the crosswords, they might clue themselves in. Indeed, as Harold unfolded his puzzle later, amid the kitchen's sun-dappled calm, a clue emerged. 5 letters for mischief's kin. Sprite. He penciled it triumphantly, the grid filling, not with routine, but revelation. The day unfolded with subtle subversions. Ascendant, Evelyn, inspired, rearranged the spice rack into a mandala of memory, each jar positioned by the dreams it evoked, clove at the heart for its fiery heartbeats. Neighbors passing the window paused, peering in with brows arched in uncharacteristic curiosity. Mrs. Hargrove, en route to her bakery, rapped on the pane. "Evelyn, your windowsill, it's artistic." Evelyn opened the door, apron dusted with flour from impromptu scones. "A whim, Margaret. Care for one? Raspberry, with a twist of thyme?" Mrs. Hargrove accepted, nibbling tentatively. The flavor exploded, tart zing tempered by herbal whisper, evoking hidden glens. "This isn't boring," she admitted, eyes widening. "It's alive."
Word rippled through Eldridge Hollow like a stone skipped across a still pond.
By noon, a trickle of townsfolk knocked, curious, cautious, drawn by the scent wafting like an invitation. Harold, from his armchair, observed the gathering. The postman sampling lemon-curd tarts etched with edible maps, the barber debating the merits of asymmetrical mustaches over Evelyn's chamomile brew. No grand gestures, but a quiet alchemy. Conversations veering from weather banalities to buried yearnings. The barber confessed a youthful sketchbook of fantastical topiaries. The postman revealed stamps collected from phantom postmarks. Harold joined, his crosswords evolving into communal ciphers, clues crowdsourced, solutions shared like secrets. As twilight tinted the sky bruised purple, Thaddeus's postcard arrived, postmarked Tempest's Edge, depicting a lighthouse beaming not light, but laughter. Inside, the storm stirs siblings. Yours now sprite-kissed. Brew trouble. I'll bottle the lightning. Evelyn pinned it beside the fridge, amid magnets of mundane milestones. Our footnote expands. Night cradled them once more, rain resuming its gentle narrative. Sleep summoned not echoes, but ensembles, an orchestra of oddities conducted by Sprite Baton. Instruments improvised, violins strung with vain threads of vapor, drums skinned in dream weave. The melody meandered, a fugue of forgotten folk tales, harmonies hiding harmonic hints at harmony in havoc. Harold soloed on a saxophone of sighs, notes bending into narratives of near misses turned triumphs. Evelyn countered with a harp of heartstrings, plucking progressions that prophesied partnerships beyond pairs. Intermission birthed a ballet, dancers as doubts, pirouetting into affirmations, their leaps landing in lakes of liquid light. The sprites capered as chorus, footwork a frenzy of footnotes, footnoting flights of fancy. An encore escalated, the stage swelling to encompass the town. Eldridge Hollow reimagined, streets serpentine with surprises, houses harboring hidden hollows of hobby. The Quinbys, center stage, not stars, but spotlighters, illuminating others' orbits. Awakening to bird song laced with whimsy, they rose invigorated. The merger, the sprites, the storm, all catalysts compounding into a compound interest of curiosity. Breakfast birthed Blueprints, a community cipher club. Meetings in the backyard under the old oak's approving shade. Invitations went out, not by post, but by pastry parcels, each scone scripted with subtle summons. Responses flooded, yeses etched in enthusiasm, the town tilting toward the Quimby's quiet quake. Weeks blurred into a whirlwind of whispers, cipher sessions spotting scavenger hunts for lost lexicons, phrases pilfered from yesteryears, reclaimed in rhyme. One hunt unearthed the forgotten fountain in the park, its waters now bubbling ballads when coins of confession were cast. Evelyn's scarves evolved, yarns dyed in dream hues, patterns plotting personal mythologies, wearers weaving their wear into wardrobes of wonder. Harold's crosswords circulated as chapbooks, clues catalyzing confessions, grids growing into gardens of graphemes. Thaddeus reappeared unannounced, materializing at a midnight meetup, his stormcaller now a scepter summoning soft showers of speculation. "You've bottled your own lightning," he marveled, joining a jam session where fiddles fiddled with fates. But the true tempest brewed internally. As the town's pulse quickened, the Quinbys confronted the core conundrum. In their bedroom, storm stilled. They sat cross-legged on the quilt, candles casting conspiratorial glows. "Have we shed the boring?" Harold queried, tracing her palm's lines like a lifeline ledger. Evelyn intertwined fingers. "No, we've burnished it. Gold from grit. The dull was our depth charge, detonating depths." He nodded, the wisdom settling like sediment into sparkle. then onward, not to dazzle, but to deepen. Their pact sealed with a kiss, tender, tempered by time yet timeless, they extinguished the flames, inviting sleep's next saga. Dreams diverged deliciously. Harold hacked through hedges of hypothesis, machete made of metaphor, emerging in meadows where math bloomed as music, equations equating to etudes, theorems thumping like bass lines. He composed a concerto for calculators, keys cascading into crescendos of calculation that computed compassion. Evelyn explored eclipses of essence, orbits overlapping in observatories of the obscure. Telescopes tuned to touch, tuned to tastes, viewing voids that voiced varieties of valor, each vista a vintage of vivacity. She bottled a nebula's note, sipping to savor symphonies of self. Confluence came in a cosmos cafe, constellations as barstools, comets as couriers carrying cosmic coffees, brews brewing bold brainstorms, sprites served as sommeliers, suggesting sips for soul sparks, one for serendipity's sting, another for stoicism's sparkle. Dialogues danced. Infinities not endless, Harold posited, stirring stardust. Loops of logic loving their limits. Evelyn countered clinking cups. Limits liberate. Boundaries as bellows, fanning flames from finite fuel. A sprite interjected, juggling Jupiter juggernauts. Boring's the bellow's breath, steady, sustaining the blaze. Enlightened, they toasted to tedium's trove, awakening anchored yet airborne. The chapter crescendoed in community. Eldridge Hollow's Harvest Festival, once a ho-hum harvest of hayrides and humdrum pies, transmuted by Quimby Quantum. Hayrides now harbored holographic histories, projections from pocket storm colors, Thaddeus's gift replaying the town's tapestry in technicolor threads. Pies pulsed with personality, Evelyn's entries embedded with edible enigmas, crusts cracked to reveal riddles resolving into recipes for reinvention. Harold hosted a hedge maze of hypotheticals, paths paved with prompt cards. What if the river reversed? Twists turned to triumphs, exits emerging enlightened. Fireworks finale fused fact with fancy, bursts blooming into beasts of burden, dragons drawing from data dragons of dormant dreams, pyrotechnics plotting personal panoramas. The town transfixed, toasted the Quimbys, not as bores, but beacons, the couple whose calm concealed cataclysms of creativity. As embers expired and echoes of ecstasy ebbed, Harold and Evelyn retreated, hands linked like lifeline lanyards. Homeward under a sky scrubbed clean by storm scour, they savored the silence, not stagnant, but symphonic. In bed, rain resuming its reverie, sleep summoned a swan song of sorts, a symphony of selves, past, present, potential, performing in perfect pitch. No rifts, no sprites, just seamless sonata, their essences entwined wind eternal encore. And so the chapter closed, not with a bang, but a breath, profound, promising more. For in Eldridge Hollow, the most boring couple had become the most boundless, their rainy sleeping story a seed sown in storm soil, sprouting sagas yet untold.